right, everybody, and welcome to a very spooky episode of Moto Stories with Unkie Phil. We're here in the laboratory. It doesn't always look like that, but we've got a couple of bikes running with bad rings, so there might be a little smoke in the shot. We've had, in the course of our doing business, some very, very strange interactions with customers over the years. Things that you might actually find horrific, especially if you worked here. And one comes to mind from a really long time ago. We had this woman show up at the shop, and you know when you meet a person and you just know that they are the living embodiment of adventure. She shows up, she's in her early 60s, and she's just aggressive and fit and cool, and she's got this really awesome, like you could tell like back in the day, she was just the coolest thing going. She's got the leather wrap on her ponytail and just leather vest, and she's super cool and just loves riding motorcycles. And she's gonna really, really teach us a thing or two about some weird stuff that can happen and how you make relationships with people and you learn stuff. She rides into our shop on an early 70s Honda CB 750. And I mean, this bike was like a time machine. It had everything a 70s bike would have. It had the Vetter fairing on it. It had some Bates bags on the back. It had a kind of a decent custom paint job, early 70s build. A little bit of money was spent back then too. She rolls in and, the bike is just running super rough. It's got the original tires on it from 1972 or 3 probably. But she managed to cowboy that thing in, and I gotta have a lot of respect for that. So she tells us that's her late husband's motorcycle. That's the motorcycle that he bought the day he got back from Vietnam, from his deployment in Vietnam. He used his money to buy that bike. And that was the bike they went on a lot of trips on. And unfortunately, he was taken from her not long after that. And the bike's been in her garage. She really hasn't been able to part with it. She's got too much wrapped up in it, and all of her memories of her husband, and he was a tough dude, all wrapped up in that CB 750. And it means a lot to her. But it's been sitting in this garage since the 70s. And she finally read some books, she did some work, she put a battery in it. She just got it running, but she just can't. She's really decided she wants to ride motorcycles. She wants to have this motorcycle be her bike. And it's in bad shape. We feel terrible for her. And this thing, we're gonna help her, okay? We're really gonna do it. And she brings the bike and we go through it. I'm just like, this is gonna need a lot more than you should probably put into this bike, but we understand sentimental value. We feel for you. So after a little while talking about the bike and going through it with her, we decide that maybe the best thing for her is if she goes and gets another motorcycle to ride and gets used to riding. And she said she rode a little bit a long time ago, but let's really put our energy into this CB and let's have her go out and get another bike to ride in the meantime. And she says that's a good idea. She wants to do that. And she decides she's gonna go off and get a bike, and we're gonna go ahead and work on this for her. And I mean, this is a major, major project. So we'd been working on the bike for maybe a month, and she shows up at our shop and she has got a really nice brand new Sportster. And she couldn't be happier. I mean, she's back, she's got the wind on her face. We bring her up to speed on the project, got a bunch of stuff ordered in. There's a bunch of stuff that's gonna take a while. So she asks, she got her new Harley, can she go back and get some stuff off the old CB 750, which we understand. That happens every time you work on a bike for somebody. They always remember they've got some things or artifacts or heirlooms on their bike and they wanna have that back. We let her go back in the service department. She's back there for a while peeling stuff off the CB 750. Cool, no big deal. And so off she disappears. Couldn't be happier, out there, wind in her hair. And we're moving along with the project. We've got a lot of other stuff going on. Hadn't heard from her for a little bit. And then she comes back into the shop. She comes back into the shop and the Harley Davidson is just scraped all down the right-hand side. I mean, brand new bike and it is in bad shape. Gas tank, mufflers, everything. This thing's laid down hard. In fact, she said, she goes, I was out riding and a person turned left in front of me, and I had no choice. I had to lay it down. We've heard that before. It's a terrible situation to hear. And so here we have this Harley Davidson, and it's in bad shape. And she's got the Honda in the shop as well. And she says, you know, we gotta have a conversation. I think I may have bitten off more than I could chew. I think the Harley was too big. I think the Harley was too heavy. I said, I totally agree. She goes, I think I need a smaller bike. I said, that's no problem. So she's looking around our shop, and we have this gorgeous VLX 600 rather, this Honda. It's a cute little Honda. It's perfect. It's a small cruiser. And she jumps on it. She instantly falls in love. And you know what? It's great for her too, because it's affordable. It's very inexpensive. So we write her up, and she's got it. And you know, it's great. She was able to roll out the same day. But again, you know, go back and take some of the stuff, personal items and stuff off the Sportster, her saddlebags and whatever. And we let her do all that. She gets everything, off she goes. And that's just cool. She's back on the road. And we really feel like she's got a much better chance than this lighter bike. And you know, that's the way you're supposed to learn how to ride. And she pops by a couple of times. She's having a great time. And we're moving ahead, and we give her a call and tell her her gas tank has come in and the pipes have come in for the Sporty. So that's probably a good time for her to get ready to, you know, come in and get the Sporty if she's ready. And maybe she wants to sell us that VLX back, because that thing's gorgeous. And we'd be thrilled to have it back at the shop. She could consider it kind of a rental. Not a bad situation for all involved. She says, I've got bad news. I was in a crash on the VLX. VLX has been destroyed. It's in bad shape. Oh no, I mean, I definitely don't want to hear that. This is awful. I want to console her. I want to do anything I can to help her. And she says, in fact, this is how bad it was. I was riding the bike to your shop to come in and check on the status of the Sportster when I got in a crash. I came around a corner and a car came out from the blind driveway, and I was involved in the collision. In fact, there's some debate whether or not I'm going to be cited for the crash. She goes, I'm beside myself, and she's a little busted up at this point too, and I feel terrible. And so we discuss it. We go through kind of what are her options, what's going on with it. She goes, look, I just am going to have the bike towed here. I'm going to have the machine towed here. Honestly, I was too embarrassed. That's why I waited for you to call me, and I didn't come in. I was just horrified. I said, yeah, I get that. So she decides she's going to get a Vespa. She decides at this point she's going to get down to an automatic transmission. And I agree with her. I think it's a great idea. And she picks a Vespa that we had traded in, 150cc Vespa, beautiful bike, a couple of scratches on it here and there, but it's available for a song. And she decides that if she gets down to the Vespa, if she gets down to a bike that's an automatic transmission and really simple to operate, that maybe she'll be able to operate safer on the road. And it's not a bad strategy. I wish she would have done it 2 bikes ago, but here we are. So that's the decision. She's going to go ahead and do that. And while we're having this discussion, a couple of visits, her VLX comes in, and it's tragic. Her shadow is in just such bad shape. It's just terrible. And we take a look at the shadow, and we realize that this is going to be a really tough one to bring back. There's a chance this bike is totaled. And because it was an older bike too, it doesn't have the value. We know the insurance company's not going to give her enough money to buy a new bike out of this deal, and it's pretty harsh. And so she comes in to pick up the Vespa. We got it all prepped and ready to go for her, and tell her bike is here now. So she goes over and she says, well, you know what? Just go ahead and take the stuff from the shadow and just move it over to the Vespa for me. Just make sure you move everything over, and I'll come and pick the Vespa up. And I said, that's not a problem. We'll be happy to do that for you. Cell phone holder or whatever. And she goes, now make sure though, just make sure that you don't forget my Gremlin bell. And I said, I didn't remember that. I didn't remember a Gremlin bell. And so we go over to the bike, as we do, and sure as hell, on the bottom of this VLX, there's this leather strap, and there's this, ugly, just a disgusting piece of metal that looks like it's just been hammered together and maybe welded together very haphazardly. And And there's also like a rabbit's foot, like a desiccated old rabbit's foot on there. And I'm like, God, this thing is disgusting. But you know, people are funny about gremlin bells in this industry. You got to respect that. People are weird about it. And I said, all right. So I grabbed this horrible thing and I go ahead and I rig it up to the bottom of the Vespa, as you do. And so she shows up and pick up the bike and take the bike home. And I said, I got to ask. I said, what the hell is going on with that gremlin bell? That thing is just, I mean, it's disgusting. That rabbit's foot is rotted out years ago, but you know, she was really sentimental about stuff. So I figured this is probably going back to that CB750 that her husband bought when he got out of Vietnam. And I'm thinking that that's probably where this goes back. This is probably an heirloom off of that original bike. And I ask her about it. She's there and she goes, well, you know what that is that's parts that my husband collected while he was in Vietnam from every gun emplacement and a little souvenir that he had for every time he'd shoot a helicopter out of the sky or a plane or a personnel carrier or something. He kept a little bit of metal and he fused that all into that bell. And the other part, the animal, that's a monkey's paw. And he'd cut that off and had it with him his whole time he was in Vietnam. And so that's what that is. Now, folks, I gotta tell you, I don't believe in strange juju, but is it possible that that gremlin bell, that horrible thing that was based on such death and anguish and misery, is it possible that that is what was causing her the wreck of 4 bikes in 4 months? Or was she just a really rotten rider? Well, guys, that was terrifying, and I know you're gonna be really excited to see what we bring you tomorrow. I can only tell you this, it's going to be haunting, frightening, and it might even be true, but you'll never know.